life, we must believe that things end, things end at the right time. Things end, things end in due time. This time, it will be my time, yeah. In due time, in my time, I'm so glad that it's my time. You know, I'm really sitting here thinking like as I'm getting ready to what spontaneously record this episode or whatever. I'm just thinking about how, and I do this from time to time, but you got to gas yourself up, sometimes you got to really encourage yourself in the Lord. I like the way I do things. I do. I like that it's not so structured. It doesn't have to be perfect. I like that. Now, granted, I will say this because I've thought about this, I think, over the last week. I do think every time that I was, let's say, doing a quote unquote new season or something like that, I would come back with something new. Like I don't remember when I came with the intro, and then I don't know, some of the little adjustments that I've made over the years, because I think now I've been doing this for 4 years. Granted, whether it's on or off, I do it whenever I feel it's necessary, and also, just kind of not just as I'm led, but just like I don't know when it needs to be done or when I want to do it, because I think that matters too. You should want to, you should want to do the things that you do. I think that matters because I forget if it's in Ecclesiastes or Proverbs, but it is a blessing to enjoy your labor, and it is a blessing to enjoy your food. And so to me, I began taking it personally when I don't enjoy what I do or I'm not enjoying what I eat. You know, I feel like the blessing of God should be on anything and everything that you do, and there should definitely be joy. And so some people could disagree with that, but whatever. But going back to tooting my own horn, I do like the way it just, for me, it comes off authentic. Granted, I do have little things here and there, some possible aesthetically pleasing looking things, but I can go down the, I guess, the rabbit hole of stuff that I don't like I did probably a little bit on the other episode of what was it? It was about forgiveness and also the righteousness, and I wouldn't say the no, forgiveness and chastisement episode. Because I don't necessarily care to be seen. I don't mind it. I do think that I'm beautiful. I don't necessarily use sex oriented words. If I say beautiful, pretty, handsome, it's all the same to me. I'm the apple of God's eye. I think that God made me wonderfully, and ultimately words are only words. Um anyway, point being, let's get to what I wanted to talk about today. I want to discuss, because I mentioned it in the other episode, forgiveness and chastisement. I was going to be talking about the Sinners movie because I did watch it. I only watched it once, but I think even in that, it wasn't necessarily, I'll say right off the bat, I guess this can be a review or whatever, but right off the bat, I wouldn't even recommend the movie to anybody, to be honest. Um, that's just me, though. I don't. It's not about faith or the lack thereof. I just wouldn't recommend it because I didn't necessarily see anything that was eye catching or like jaw dropping for me. But I think that is the lack of depth in cinema, comprehension, or even, I watched it on a, I don't know, it just not in the aspect or the dimensions it was desired. The intent in which the director wanted it to be seen, I did not see it that way. So maybe that is why I didn't have that admiration for it or whatever. But I don't know, from even just without all of the theatrics and the simple art itself, I just was not intrigued by it for me. Um Now, I guess, spoiler alert, because I can't give you a review without giving you the story. because I know there's some people who may not watch it, and there's some people, like I said, I do not, I wouldn't recommend anyone to watch it. Not, like I said, faith or non-faith reasons. I just didn't personally think it was all that. But I would, I guess, from a faith perspective, I would recommend people watch it, only because I gained this understanding that it was nothing but a how do you say, an instrument for division per usual. And I think a lot of times believers fall for it. I mean, it just is what it is. But also not just believers, but the lack thereof, people fall for it and not realizing what was the intention of the director, because this is one of the issues I think with art. A lot of times, people can write something, but one thing I struggled with also in school was knowing what the author meant by what they wrote, which is very important to know what was intended by the person who created it, not what you perceived it to be, but what was meant. It's the same way with the Bible. What did God mean? Not what you took from it, but what was meant by it. And I mean, we struggle, I think all walks and strokes of life, people struggle with the fact rather than what they felt about something, you know. And bringing that into the movie, I do think that you cannot, I'll say this and hopefully it fits perfectly, but you cannot have a movie or in trying to paint reality creating narratives that are not real, right? And so as a believer, as someone who believes in Jesus, there are people in the world who do not like Jesus, who do not believe Jesus was Lord, who some people who believe Jesus existed, but he was just a man. Some people who don't even believe Jesus was real or whatever. There are a lot of variables and variations of people and their faith, right? It's not my way and how I see it, but there is other I can't think of the word. But anyway, it exists, right? And so when you have a movie like that, because there's one instance in the movie where the man says that religion and it was forced on us, I'm not mad about that, because there are people that feel that way. And I mean, how do you know how to minister to somebody if you can't see where their heart is at? And if you cannot see what is I guess the heart pulse or like the temperature of the room, and I guess that's why I mentioned I had some friends who watched it, and from that moment, I wasn't going to watch it because I didn't know it was a thing. It was not on my radar to watch it. um I didn't know it was a vampire movie. I didn't know it was a horror film. I barely knew it was called. I didn't even know it was called Sinners. I just knew. I think a few months ago I saw a trailer of Michael B. Jordan, and that was it. But I think I even saw that on YouTube. So I'm not really into pop culture or a lot of things that are current or whatever. It was like when I find out, I find out. But that's beside the point. You know, you have to realize that movies, you want movies to depict reality, because as believers that's going to help us to be able to do our job effectively. Now I also say that with reality, I don't expect or assume that any believer should be going to watch an R-rated movie. And that's not saying, oh, you can't, blah 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 blah, and I'm probably going to get into that a little bit later, because, well, if I interject now, no, I'll do that later. Okay. I just don't feel like, I personally don't watch R-rated movies. I don't like horror films. I don't like a lot of stuff, but that's just me. I don't watch it. And it's not even because of a spiritual reason. I just don't watch them. I don't like it. I don't like blood. Now, granted, even though I will say in this movie the blood looks very, and I mean maybe that's the style that the director was going for, but it was just boring. It was like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. And I mean, it's kind of almost like if Scary Movie, like the comedic version of Scary Movie, if that was a thing, but it was actually trying to be scary or trying to be like an actual movie. You get what I'm saying? Rather than a caricature of what is it? Oh Lord, I forget the actual villains that they used for these movies. But either way, it was just like a caricature of a scary movie, Sinners, to me. And so right now I'm not really explaining what happened in the movie, but just things that I don't know, just did not make the movie aesthetically pleasing, or even like one that I would be like, oh my, that was a good movie. Now, I would say it was a decent movie. I think it was a decent movie. Still wouldn't recommend anybody watch it because it was, I mean, from that point, it was decent. It didn't give me anything. It didn't give me life. It just didn't do that. It didn't do that for me. But I mean, no, like, yeah, I watched it because I had some friends and they were expressing some of their sentiment and some of their, I guess it was grievances, sentiments, likes and dislikes about the movie. But one of the common theme that I kind of got from it was like this main focus was on religion. And so, I sat there and I listened and listened and listened. And one thing about me in my friend groups, most people know I ask more questions than I make assumptions because I think that is an intelligent way to live your life rather than assuming and jumping straight to what you think you know when you don't know half of what you do know. And so I began asking questions, trying to understand why. Because one of my friends told me that the favorite part of the movie his favorite part of the movie was the dancing in the club scene, or the juke joint scene, right? And so I was really trying to understand why it was his favorite part of the movie. And I think I got an answer, but it was kind of like in this conversation, I think in all conversations, we have to be willing to listen. And I'm talking about listening with your natural ear and listening with your spiritual ear. Because granted, some people may not, it's like even with art, right? If one person can perceive it this way and another person can perceive it that way, I think even a person can say that they're okay and them not be okay, if you understand what I'm saying. Like there's always some underlying things or something that is actually happening that is not being said with words, if that makes sense. It's discernment basically. And so, and I mean, listen, I would pray that if my friends ever saw this, that they would know that I use this not, and this is another reason why I don't say names, but I do use my life as an example. I do use my life in my art and stuff like that, and some people may not like that. I've had friends who didn't like that in the past, but it is what it is. um I don't do it to hurt anyone. I'm not doing it maliciously, but it is what it is. So no, yeah, I just wanted to understand why this particular scene or why this particular moment made this person, brought this person to tears or motivated this person to basically cry, right? Or feel deeply about what was going on. And after after maybe asking the question, I think two or three times, I'm gonna say two for the benefit of a doubt, after asking it twice, because I think the initial response was kind of in alignment with the whole anti religion thing, and it just didn't really fit. I mean, maybe it did, and maybe I misunderstood it. But I just, as I watched the movie, and I guess that comes later, but it just didn't fit why that scene was his favorite, because it was more so. Now, unless there, and like I said, there are people who hate God. There are people who hate religion. There are people who hate. There are, and so I could be oblivious to that, but I do. I wanted to make sure I was getting the answer, not that I wanted, but the answer, like the truth. And I mean, I guess the answer was because initially it was like, well, the church has done this and they've imposed this and put all of this on us and oppressed and all of this. That was the initial answer. And then when I asked again, because I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't feel like that was the right, I guess that's the wrong word to say, but I was going to say it, so let me finish. I didn't feel like that was the right answer. But even when I say I didn't feel like that was the right answer, I didn't feel like it was the truth for him, right? And now that's kind of ignorant of me to say because I can't tell somebody how they feel. I can't tell somebody about their experiences and why they resonated with something. But I just, to me, I I guess I was just hoping that it was not what I thought it was and trying to, I guess, like, perceive something different. But people, church hurt is a real thing. Church hurt is a real thing. And I do think that a lot of people who watch this, because I've looked into some of the interviews of the director, and I could not find, and this is just me, and maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I could not find one interview where this man was anti faith or anti religion. Now, granted, he grew up Baptist, he grew up in an all black Catholic church, and you can do that and still raise Cain and Abel. You can do that and not love God, not honor God. So that doesn't mean anything to me. The fact that someone grew up Baptist, and I'm talking about the director at this point, grew up Baptist, like I said, attending an all black Catholic church. I never knew that was a thing. But I did a little bit of my research. I did a little bit of my research because when my friends or people in my life tell me they like something or whatever the case is, I'm actually invested in them. And I do that, one, because of the love of God and the love that I have for them. But the love you have for them should be based on your love for God, to me. And so if someone expresses interest, you should try your best to relate and connect to them, you know, become like them without submitting and falling prey to some of the things they do, if that makes sense, like kind of like Paul did, you know. But back to the point, I guess I wanted to try to overlook the fact of the matter was it was church hurt, and that I guess this person is no longer, well, they, I don't know, I do know some of their past, and I'm not gonna, I guess, expose that because that's, yeah, that's not right. But I guess let's bring it all into perspective, I guess, now, because that was the one of the motivators, because I wanted to effectively minister. Like, how do I go forward? Because granted, it's been a month now, so I'm definitely not going to have this conversation, because it's just, okay, how do I go forward? Let's say dealing with maybe the lack of faith or whatever, or maybe anger or whatever, or maybe it's just someone who is nonchalant toward, you know, faith or whatever. Like, I need to know, not just for me, but for ministry purposes, right? I don't believe that our relationship should be void of God. And if God has a purpose for it, and especially when you're dealing with people who may not believe, I don't know, you need God in the middle of that, and you need the strategy for what to do. And I know some people, they feel like, well, don't deal with those people, you're unequally yoked. Good luck to you. I know the purpose that I have, and my purpose is to not just simply surround myself with people who already believe, because they already believe. You get what I'm saying? Now, granted, those people should be the people that are in my corner. Those people should be the people that are, you know, a part of my backbone and the accountability system that I have. The believers, yes, but I'm here for the people that God wants. God is looking for still, right? The ones that Jesus died for. Jesus died for all of us, not some of us, all of us, right? So that is why I'm having the relationships I'm having. Because if you're not showing the love of Christ and you're not being the light, what's the point and what's the purpose? And so some places you're going to have to go, but that don't mean that you can dibble and dabble in anything that they're doing, but you have to know how to be the light. What is in you, who is in you has to be greater than that which is in the world. So anyway, back to the point, because I did a lot of talking. I was trying to set the scene as to, I think, and I don't know where it came from, but I just felt this okay, like, to watch the movie, because I talked to someone, I think that very same day I was talking to my friend. I went to Bible study, and I talked to one of my sisters in Christ, and she was saying, you know, how God basically told her that she couldn't watch it, like, no. And I was expressing to her how I just felt led, like, not, I mean, I wouldn't say I needed to, but like I needed to. And I think even that was the week it came out, but it took me a month to get around to it, because I mean, it just really slipped my mind. Like, I didn't care until one of the people that I associate with, they brought it up. They brought it up to watch it. So I was like, okay, whatever, let's watch it. And now I guess this is a month later. And so my review is going it's going to be a little stale because I'm going to be honest, I was paying attention but I won't. But honestly, I'll try to give as much detail as I possibly can. And so, spoiler alert, yeah, just in case you want to watch it, this might not be for you. But if you don't care about spoilers and you still gonna watch it, this might be for you. So, um, let's see the first portion of the movie. We are in plantation. I guess that's what's going on. The setting is 1932, 1940s, somewhere around that time frame. And so I think it's like the outskirts are in the middle of Jim Crow era, if I'm not mistaken. And you have a father or family, a young man. The young man is the star. The father is just the co-star. But you have a young man who I guess is like most of us, we work and we work and we work, Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday, whatever you do, you put your all into something, and then you get to the end of the week or you get to a specific day and you want to relax. You want to, wind down and actually enjoy your life. And, you know, that is what he strives to do. And I don't blame, even I'm gonna start weaving some of the faith-based things into it because I don't blame him. Even Ecclesiastes, as I mentioned in the Forgiven and Chastised video, Ecclesiastes in the very last chapter, the very, very last 2 to 3 verses, it talks about the young man, living his life, but in all that, don't forget God. There are a lot of things that are carnal. Fishing is carnal. Doing hair is carnal. There are a lot of things that are carnal. They're not necessarily set apart for God, right? The Levites were the only people that were set apart for God, which is why they could not work any other area. They couldn't do anything. So their 10% came from what went to the church. They got that, right? So that was everything else the people did outside was carnal. And I could be mistaken, so correct me if I'm wrong. If you're intelligent in that area, please feel free to let me know. But I'm pretty sure that was carnal. Yes. So, there's a lot of things that we're going to do that is not sanctioned or, honorable to God, but that doesn't make it a sin, right? And so Sammie, the young man, he wakes up and I guess he's looking for his guitar. And so his father took his guitar because I think if the way the scene was being set, his father wanted him to maybe play it for him in the church on Sunday. I'm not sure. But either way, his father asked him to help with a sermon. And so he wanted him to go and read a specific verse from the Bible. But Sammie knew the verse by heart, right? And so all of this is happening. And, I forgot to mention this, but the father the father took the guitar. And so after Sammie quotes the verse, the guitar is sitting behind him, behind the pulpit or whatever, or the podium. And so Sammie takes his guitar and then he begins to head out. And so his father then begins to question him about, and this is a key point. This is a key point because I think a lot of people began to draw conclusions because when you're hurt, I hate to say a hit dog will holler, but because that doesn't necessarily fit here either. But when you're hurt, you miss context and you miss what really happened, right? And so there were people that said, the father basically said that blues was the devil's music. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I did not hear that throughout the whole movie. Maybe I'm mentally slow. Maybe I wasn't paying attention because I admit that the movie did not have my attention too much. But I did not hear the father say that. One thing the father mentioned, and I wrote it down because I thought it was so profound. He said, "You keep Ooh, Lord, I got to get to my Discord because I wrote it down. But basically, he was talking to his son, and so he knew that his son was going to go and play for drunkards and people who fornicated. And I'm gonna skip ahead because this is gonna make so much sense, right? His father didn't lie. His father didn't lie. Um, Sammie himself ended up having sex with a married woman. Ended up having relationship with a married woman. And so that's what his daddy was trying to protect him from, because as iron sharpens iron, I forget how the verse fully goes, but I don't think people genuinely believe your company can influence and affect and corrupt your decisions. The people who you decide to hang around, they can influence your decisions. And so, Sammie was around his cousin and well, his cousins, and around people who his father, I would quote, but people who are sweating on each other, neglecting their families and their responsibilities at home. And so now, granted, the father said this: you keep dancing with the devil, one day he's going to follow you home. And so I think I want to bring in another show that I watched a while back, and some people would disagree with this, but it was the Legend of Korra, the Avatar. It's a cartoon, not the blue aliens thing, but it's a whole nother thing, right? And so in this show, this girl, she would always receive advice from people to be careful of this person, be mindful of this person. But Korra always did what she wanted to do. She always did what she wanted to do. And so toward the very end, the very gift, we can say the gift of God or whatever, but the very gift that was bestowed upon her was stripped, not just from her, but from now people who would come after her, right? And so, she lost something that was very dear, powerful, and we could, well, I would hate to liken it to the Holy Spirit, but for the sake of believers, let's liken it to the Holy Spirit, right? You go somewhere, or I don't know what people in the world, what you love the most, liken it to that, right? How someone is trying to protect your life, protect your finances, protect something that is super significant to you, but you don't want to listen to them. So you go out there and then you find out for yourself, which does not have to happen if we just simply listen to people sometimes. If you just listen, you don't have to go through all the hurt, harm, and pain that other people went through, because they're really just trying to do the best for, I mean, you know. And so to me, that's what the father was doing. The father didn't really call music sinful. He didn't say it was evil. I didn't hear that. I'm just being honest. I didn't hear it at all. But what he did say, basically in a non-subtle way, is you're going to hang with sinners. You're going to influence yourself and fall in the path in which they have fallen, right? And so I want to tie that to the title of the movie, because a lot of people, and I believe a lot of people who don't want to take accountability, or they have this weird sense of, well, we're all sinners. You know how people do, Jesus loved people, so why don't you love? Why don't we? I mean, you're distorting it, but okay, I understand what you're saying. But anyway, point being, we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That is a fact. But we're not going to act like everybody in the movie was a sinner. There is a sinner, and then there are those who participate actively in sin. That's the difference. And so even the movie in itself, I mean, the context was talking about sinners. Sinners. It was not talking about all of us being sinners. It was talking about sinners. If you get what I'm saying, like I'm trying, it's like, it sounds like I'm just talking in circles, but I know what I'm trying to convey. But it's talking about people who were deliberately living a life of sin. Now, that wasn't the full context of the movie, but if you pay attention, it really was. To me, the underlying message was a mere fact. The dad said, you keep dancing with the devil, one day he's gonna follow you home. So that was one statement that stuck with me from the very beginning, because it was powerful, it was potent, and I think it was something that people overlooked because they wanted to be mad at the church, or they wanted to make it a movie about anti-religion. And I'm gonna get into the hoodoo and voodoo stuff later, but like I said, there's stuff in this world that is real. but you get to choose what you do at the end of the day. Balaam got to choose what he did at the end of the day, right? So it just is what it is. Balaam could have believed and trusted and honored God, but he decided to do what he did. Okay. So, and for those that don't know, Balaam was a warlock. Balaam, whether you want to call it hoodoo, voodoo, he did it. He did whatever, right? It don't matter. It's all the same basically. And so, my thing is this movie to me, it already set the tone for there's a danger coming to those that surround themselves with people who do weird things and things that are not morally sound, right? Now, some people, I don't know how you can perceive anything else because literally that is what was said. I never heard the father say that the blues was the devil's music, but there are people who made it seem like that's what that man said, but I didn't hear that. I never heard that at all. Didn't hear it at all. But granted, so now we're leaving the church because, the son doesn't necessarily care. He like most of us young people, we want to have fun and we want to do what we want to do. And so, in that, like I said, just like Cora, you don't listen to the people in your life who's trying to actually help you, and you don't realize at the time it's helping you. You think it's hindering you and oppressing you and all this other stuff. But okay, if we literally took the faith and religion aspect out of it, there's a lot of people in this life who will give us sound wisdom and advice, and we ignore it and we reap and pay the consequence and the price for it. I mean, even if we, like I said, took the whole faith aspect out, that is a beautiful and excellent message to display, that everybody that is trying to, it seems like they don't want you to have fun. They're not trying to be your enemy. They're trying to be your friend. Everybody ain't trying to rain on your parade. Some people are just trying to help you because they care about you and they know something you don't know. Now, okay, so Sammie leaves and then yada yada yada. Now we're beginning to become introduced to the cousins. Lord, I don't forgot their names, but one got a red hat and the other got a blue hat. And so the cousins are played by one particular actor. His name is Michael B. Jordan. And so, long story short about these cousins are thieves, crooks, and bandits. And so they robbed the Italians and the Irish and got amassed their fortune, or whatever fortune they had, because it seemed like they were strapped for money after they started the club. It seemed that way. And so but that's how hustlers do. I guess they get money to get more money, and so you got to invest money if you want to make money. And so that's basically what these cousins was doing. So now they're looking to start a club. They bought land. Now there are some people in this, I guess those who watched this movie, that tried to connect the KKK to Christianity. They try to connect vampires to Christianity. I mean, I think that's a grand level of delusion, if I be honest, but it's a perception. People can perceive that. But the KKK was a whole separate thing. I didn't necessarily see the connection to religion, but the cousins brought that barn and that land from the KKK, but it was a setup from the KKK in order to have them a slaughter fest. Basically, they were gonna come back the next morning or whatever and kill all the black people who were gonna be in the juke joint. And so, all right, I guess that was just another extra facet of the movie. Like, it just didn't make sense, but it did because of the time period. But that's why I just didn't see where some of this stuff was necessary in the movie, because it's this and then that and then this and then that. And I don't feel like it was as philosophical as it tried to be, or people try to make it out to be. I don't know. Either way, but it was just very messy. And I'm an artist. I'm a poet. I write, and so I like to think deeply about things and try to understand it. But anyway, I know this is 34 minutes, so give me a second. So anyway, they not bought, but they bought the land and the place from the KKK man, yada yada yada. We're gonna skip forward. There are women that these men have intertwined themselves with. Now, one is named Annie. So I forget if it's the red hat who liked, no, I think it's the blue hat who liked Annie. Annie, she was into hoodoo and voodoo. And so Annie, she made a charm for the blue hat that he wore around his neck. And so that is going to play into what I want to say at the, I guess, closer to the end. Or maybe do I skip it? Let's get to it. Okay. So like I said earlier, whether we want to agree or not as believers, hoodoo and voodoo is real, right? God gave us a decision who we would serve. That didn't mean that everything else was fraudulent. It just meant who do you surrender your authority to? Because that is what rebellion is. Rebellion is doing it without the permission and without the will of God, without anything that goes against the will of God. That's rebellion, right? And so whatever, right? Anyway, Annie was into or practiced hoodoo, voodoo, whatever you want to call it. And so, like I said, she gave a charm to the blue hat cousin and he had always worn it. And so, why is that important? And I don't think that that glorifies hoodoo over Christianity in the end. And this is why I tell you that. This is why I say that. Okay. I'm trying to think there's people in the Bible that were against God, but God used them as a in many ways for his purposes, right? Whether we understand it or not, there are a lot of things that people will look at and say, where's your God now? But they don't realize how God is using them, or even God is using a situation for our good, and it may not even look like it, but it is. And there's a story that people usually sometimes tell, and it's coming to mind now, where there was I think a woman or someone who needed groceries and she was praying and stuff like that, and so her neighbor overheard her, and then he ended up buying her groceries, and then she went to the door and answered and saw that there were groceries there. But so then the neighbor began to mock her about how she was praying and stuff, and God, blah, 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 didn't answer. But look at how foolish you are. You don't realize, in you trying to be petty, you answered the prayer. And so I think we don't understand, or people in life, Christian and non-Christian, don't understand. God oftentimes answers prayers through people, whether those be our enemies or our friends or people who are unaware. They are answering and doing the will of God. That's my belief. Anyway, so that ties into the charm. And so now, as the blue hat, I think is, I hope, I don't know. I probably got it backwards. Either way, one of the brothers, the one who liked Annie, survived, I think. Okay. He did not get turned into a vampire. Now, he survived yet. I put a yet on that. But he did not get turned into a vampire, unlike his brother. His brother did. So now they're having a tussle and they're fighting, right? And because his brother knows that he needs him. Like, he loves his brother. But there's a whole thing surrounding the whole vampire thing. And I'm going to get to that later, because their whole thing was about love and community. And it was about, that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, okay. Because that needs a whole conversation on its own. So the brothers are fighting, but the vampire brother goes to bite the one who is still human, and he can't, right? Okay. And I tie it obviously to, because it's the hoodoo, the voodoo, right? And some people not gonna like that, but whatever, right? I believe in Jesus, but it is what it is. Like I said, that stuff is real. I just don't dibble and dabble in it. The same where I could give a little testimony where I began to try to understand more about demons, not because I wanted to practice demonology, but because I wanted to be stronger in warfare. But as you know, I stumbled upon an actual occult like book, and it was like that night it was a very weird, very awkward dream. But I think even before I went to sleep, something in me was like, I don't need to be dealing with that, and because there was stuff that I had seen before and it didn't really bother me, but that book in particular, it kind of sent me over the edge. So anyway, all I'm saying is there's stuff out there that we should, I forget the point I was trying to make. Either way, I don't dibble and dabble. I don't want to, but there are people who do, and that stuff is real. So um point is, the brother, he went to bite him, and it for some reason he could not proceed to bite his brother because there was like a force field over him, right? Okay. Now, how and where is the correlation of that working for the good of Sammie? Because there was a Irish vampire, the white Irish vampire, who was looking for Sammie because music has a spiritual authority, or like this spiritual essence. And we as believers, we learn that from David, right? Or even, I mean, probably well before David, but it was especially exemplified in David and Saul's situation. And so the vampire was looking for Sammie, right? And so in the end, he ends up not getting Sammie, but he has Sammie, in his hands, right? And so Sammie becomes afraid, and he resorts to what he know. And the word says, train a child up in the way that they should go, and when they're older, they would not depart from it. Now, I believe that played out in 2 ways, maybe 3. But at this point, Sammie reverted back to what he knew, I guess the Lord's Prayer. And so some people, well, no, let's stick to the movie. So the vampire then proceeds to say the Lord's Prayer also. And so then he has this monologue about how it brings him comfort and all this other stuff, and how another man began to say it, yada, yada, yada. And so basically he was saying there was no power in it. There was no power in it. And, then at some point, I think Sammie hits him over the head with the guitar. And there's like a metal disc in the guitar that gets lunged, like it's stuck in the head of the vampire. And so then after that, that really upsets the vampire or whatever. And then he goes to try to finally bite. Because villains, they like to have a little 5 minutes of spotlight. You know what I'm saying? The shine. But they don't just do what they need to do and keep it moving. Anyway, but no. So he finally goes to bite him. But then the cousin that survived saved Sammie. And so to me, that's another, the woman praying for the groceries and then the enemy bringing the groceries moment. You mocked him for praying for his soul, for his salvation, but yet his salvation came through an untraditional or even an unrecognizable means. And so to me, I don't care about the hoodoo and voodoo and all that other stuff. That don't bother me, because everything in this life will serve God, whether or not we want to see it or believe it or not. I believe God is the author and the finisher of everyone's faith and fate. And so in the end, to me, I don't see how people could overlook this and make it like, oh, hoodoo is more superior. How could you say that when Sammie is still alive? He was the only one out of everybody who probably prayed. Well, that we get to see. The movie sets it up like this, right? But he's the only one that prayed and the only one that got to walk away. Now, this is probably, I don't want to create a fake narrative, because now the cousin who had the voodoo charm, toward the end, he took it off because I guess he wanted to die. He wanted to die, and he made a promise to the KKK man that sold him the land that at the time, him and his brother, if we see any of you C words on this land, we're going to kill all of you. And so he wanted to keep that promise. And so that's what he did. So he wanted to die. So I guess he snatched off the charm, and he went to a little hole where I guess he was ex-military. And so he pulled up this Uzi and a grenade and some other weapons that he had. And he began, as they all pulled up, there's probably like maybe 25 white men or whatever. I don't know. I'm just a rough estimate. And he went through all of them. Now, granted, he did get shot once, but not before he murdered all of them. All of them. And so, I'm not going to sit here and say, I feel like there's a bias, especially toward Christianity, but, it is what it is. But just because let's say because I say something is real doesn't mean that I dabble in it or I practice it or that I'm putting it over God, right? Demons are real. I don't worship them. Voodoo is real. I don't use it. You know, there's a lot of stuff that is real that we all get to choose at the end of the day the path that we decide to take. And it was the same with Sammie. Sammie got to choose. Now, I skipped a lot of information in the story because a lot of it was unnecessary to the point of the movie. But I did tell y'all that Sammie ended up sleeping with a married woman, which I think was one thing that his dad was trying to prevent, you know. But even still, I use this analogy or this example. It's like, let's say you have friends that are dope dealers or they're drug dealers or whatever, right? And you're with them one day and you don't know that they have a hit on them, but because you're with them, you get shot and you get killed. So do we not think that it is important to be around people who we trust, who we know are living uprightly and living morally standing lives? Like, that's the thing that the father was trying to protect Sammie from. I don't even think the dad was trying to keep Sammie from playing his guitar, because if that was the case, he could have, well, that would have made for a short movie, but he could have took, and I will get to the end scene at the end where the dad is talking about repent and put the guitar down. I'll get to that. But he could have went and hid the guitar somewhere where Sammie probably would have never looked. He could have buried it. Now, this is a movie, so they have to do certain things in order to make the movie right. So I'm speaking hypothetically. I guess hypotheticals and stuff. Now, back to the end of the movie where Sammie is the only one who lived, and I guess, you know, his cousin didn't let him know that he was going to kill himself, basically, because he committed suicide by being shot when he could have survived and left, I guess. But he wanted to be a man of his word. And so anyway, now, like I told you, all that happened, yada, yada, yada. Both cousins are dead. Now Sammie is going back to the church because he is traumatized and he done seen everybody he done had a good time with dead and done for. Okay. And, you know, I'm not really sure. Some people try to make it like, oh, he went through a traumatic experience and the daddy didn't try to comfort him with that. I mean, at some point, I get it, because this was the reason Job and his friends, the friends of Job, were in trouble the way they were. They did not compassionately sit by their friend, even yes, he was wrong with what he said to God. But as a friend, as family, you have an obligation to be there for the people that are in your life. You have to know how to protect people, how to actually, you know, show them the love of God, right? And so I'm not going to say the father was wrong or right, because there's a middle ground. If you know that somebody is doing something that's not right, or you're looking at your son and you're looking at this blood on him, and I don't know, it does become this weird thing where it's like, are you trying to shame this person? Or are you actually trying to save this person? You know, but I don't know. I can see where some people wrestle with that, but I don't wrestle with that scene, because it goes back to what the father said in the very beginning. You keep dancing with the devil, one day he's going to follow you home. And so it is, I will say this, it is hard to feel bad for people who do not listen to the things that we say, especially when we have good intentions. Now, with that being said, you still, as the one who is giving the advice, we have to know how to have compassion, sympathy, empathy, and the love of Christ, forgiveness, and not it being about the way we want it to play out, but the way God wants it to play out. You have to let that sit on the throne of your heart. God has to be on the throne of your heart in every instance and occasion that we go through, right? And so, yeah, Sammie, I mean, he's sitting there, I guess, I don't know, because Sammie's not really saying anything. His father's the only one saying all this stuff. But to me, like, I could get into my own personal thing, you know, but like I said earlier, there's a lot of things that are carnal, but they're not sinful. And I don't think people understand that, right? Like us getting our hair done and getting all these haircuts, that's carnal. You know what I'm saying? Us wanting to look fashionable and look good, smell good, that's carnal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you shouldn't take care of your hygiene. I'm not saying that. But that is stuff that does not serve God, right? Yes, our body is the temple. I know somebody would use that, but that is for a whole nother thing. Even though, yes, you should want to look good, smell good, yada, yada, yada. But that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, but if you wanted to dedicate and specifically set yourself apart from God, there's a lot of stuff that you would not be able to do. You would not be able to do. And I mean, it's why the Levites lived in the temple, basically. They lived the way they lived because they were basically, I mean, I wouldn't say eunuchs, but they were basically the nuns and the monks, quote unquote. And I could be wrong, I got more studying to do, but all I'm saying is, Sammie's purpose, I'm assuming, was to play music. And no way, shape, or form, the music wasn't the problem. And I don't believe the dad was trying to make it like music was the problem. I believe the music for Sammie was the doorway to the sin, or the doorway to those who sinned, right? Like the father put it, he said, you're going to play music or be around people who sweat on each other and who basically fornicate and do all this other stuff, drink and cuss and all this other stuff. That was the door for Sammie. It was the thing that led him to being around that kind of behavior. So the music was not the sin, like people try to portray it or make it seem like the father said it was. No, but we ought to be so careful. And I know this isn't going to resonate with non-believers, but we ought to be careful as the things that lead us into sin, right? We have to be mindful of what is going to open a door for me to go further into it, or for something to creep into my life and my heart, right? And so the people that he was playing for, you can get down to the root of it, because the root of it for Sammie was the music. But I guess also it was in his heart to go and live that kind of way or be around that kind of environment. But yet and still, he could play. I mean, like in the end, we go to the very, very end of the movie. Now, the end scene credits, Sammie, he did not, I guess, I don't know if he repented. I don't know. I'm not sure, because repentance, you can play music and it not be in secular clubs or strip clubs or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, to each their own. I know how I want to do my music, but I don't know. Either way, Sammie was playing was it This Little Light of Mine? And it was his rendition of the song, and he was playing it in a club somewhere. But I guess there's an extended version of the movie that I did not get to see, which is, I guess, why the director, with the certain formats of the movie, the director had certain edits of the movie and certain details you would get to see. And so, like I said, the way I saw it, it just was not justice of what I guess he intended. But I guess in the end, the cousin went the vampire cousin, because we didn't really get to see if the brother killed his brother. And so that possibly happened, because like I said, I didn't see it, but I did read that is what happened at the end of the movie, that he went to go and see if now the cousin wanted to see if Sammie wanted to become a vampire or whatever the case might have been. And now I'm speaking from ignorance, because I did not see this, y'all. This is what I read. And so Sammie basically declined and denied it, but I get, and see, to me, that right there is when a child is older, they will not depart from it. Now, this is, I got so much good stuff out of the movie, and I'm talking about, now I do hate the fact that it was rated R, because I don't like watching that kind of stuff for my spirit. I don't like watching that kind of stuff for me personally. But I mean, that people do that stuff, but just because people do it in reality doesn't mean that we have to feel ourselves with that, So I don't know. But I do know, but there was definitely, it's not as anti-Christian as non-believers are trying to make it out to be, and definitely as some believers are trying to make it out to be. I think that if you really like there was a video that I saw, and it really does take a mature Christian to watch the movie, because you can only watching the movie, helps you to know how to minister. It helps you to see the temperature. I mean, really, because you have to know what is going on. And I mean, granted, like I said, you don't have to fill yourself with certain things. I would not recommend it, but I don't recommend it because it just wasn't all that to me. You know what I'm saying? Um, but I don't know. I do think it shows and it helped me even furthermore to understand that it was church hurt. The reason as to why my friends like the movie so much. It's church hurt. And, I don't know. This is gonna be me on my soapbox. I want to try my best to relate and show the love of Christ. And sometimes it does feel, I mean, I wouldn't say it feels impossible, but I can only do what I can do. I can only do what I can do. And I mean, today I think is getting extremely hard because people don't care anymore. People don't care. People will listen to your opinions and then express theirs, and then it just is what it is. Like they're not, it's like we're just talking to talk these days. And I'm not talking about me and my friend group, but I'm just talking about humanity in general. Like people will debate and the debates are pointless. I'm not debating with nobody. I feel like that is a waste of time. If I'm telling you about Jesus Christ, I'm not sitting here so you can try to tell me about Buddha. I mean, and yes, I respect if that's what you choose to do, but I don't know, it's weird because it's like I'm in the middle of I respect you and I want to listen so I can know how to minister. But I'm also starting to see, like I said, people don't care. You can do all this talking and well, there's a difference though. I'm telling you, I don't know how to explain it, but I can see the seeds are not being planted anymore. And I mean, I hate to say that because I'm not God. I can't see what God sees, but it just seems as if though the seeds are not being planted anymore. It's like it does not matter. There's nothing for God to water. There's no increase for God to get because the seeds are not being planted. And it's not because the people aren't trying. It's not because, now granted, I know the Bible says that the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. But it just feels now at this point like it's well, and I don't know, maybe we're not there. Maybe I'm because I've seen things and then down the line it kind of gets amplified. So I don't know. But it just feels that way to me. Like I'm beginning to see how it doesn't matter who's watering. It doesn't matter and it's not everywhere, just specific places. But we all know it's supposed to get worse before it gets better. But no. So I didn't give the whole movie, but I gave the most important parts of the movie where I do feel as if though, I don't feel like hoodoo is being celebrated, nor is it being put on a pedestal above Christianity. I don't believe Christianity was the main topic of the movie. I don't think the movie really had a topic, really, to be honest, besides the vampires. Let's talk about the vampires. The vampire, the Irish vampire was looking for a community. So he had been alive for so long, apparently, and that's why he was looking for Sammie. I'm trying to be fast. And so he wanted to have this euphoric experience, going back into time because music really does have a spiritual connection, right? And so that's why he's looking for Sammie, because he wants to feel the love of his people. He wants to be connected to the past, right? And so he goes, and really this is how a lot of us, misery loves company, right? So this man was alone. And I mean, it all walks of life, people look for community, right? And so in this, you have to be mindful. I'm trying to think how to say it, because people will drag you down for their purposes and for their need, and make it seem like it's for the benefit of all, right? But if anybody watch it, and I don't know, maybe you see this, because I want to convey it as how I'm feeling it right now, but that man literally turned and denied people heaven or whatever they believe in. He denied them that for his own selfish reasons. And to me now, I mean, we can relate that to whatever we feel, but to me, I mean, that's the whole title was perfect for the movie Sinners. Like that's what sinners do. That's what sin does. It's selfish. It's not necessarily, and I don't want to tie any direct movement to this, but there are specific people that talk about, oh, it's about love, it's about love. But you look at them and the very next thing they're doing is anti-love. And I'm talking about, like, I'll say this, I was listening to a radio station the other day, and this is going to be different than what some people thought I was going to talk about, but the woman, she was basically calling white people everything but they name and but a child of God. Now, she didn't call them the C word, but she basically was calling them everything but, children of God. And to me, I just kind of felt so disgusted by it, because I'm like, now, if a white man was to get up there on a radio show and call us chocolate monkeys or something like that, or, anything like that, fondue or something, how would you feel? You get what I'm saying? And to me, like, that's what I'm talking about. The very people that talk about love, 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 acceptance, anti-bigotry, be the main people promoting bigotry. And it be weird. It's weird. Now, granted, I don't want nobody sitting here saying I'm anti-black. I love my skin. I love black. Now I say this loosely. Well, let me not say that then. But I'm pro-black all the way. I love my heritage. I love my family. I love every shade that comes from around me and within me. So, but I mean, the fact is the fact, and the truth is the truth. Love doesn't say hateful rhetoric and hateful things, even as a joke. That's not funny. You get what I'm saying? And so you can relate a lot of stuff to these kinds of movies, where it's like, that's what sin does, though. And people don't realize it, because, it's okay. They did this to us. We should be better than that. You should be better than that. I mean, for real. I'm being so serious, But I don't know. I look at a lot of things, and to me, the vampires don't resemble Christianity to me at all. I mean, if anything, it represented what the title of the movie said: sinners. Sinners. I mean, you lay down with dogs and you got up with fleas. You got bit. You got bit. You was in the lion's den, got bit, and now look at you. You get what I'm saying? Like, so I don't understand how anybody could say, well, this is what it was saying about Christians and this is what it was saying about this. But people do that oftentimes. They do not want to feel the guilt and the weight of what is labeled on them. Now, I'm not saying that the director was a faith-based director. I'm not. But it's funny, like I said, I'm a very optimistic person. So I knew when God allowed me to watch it, I was going to see the good in it, because that's the only thing to see for me. That's the only thing to see for me. I don't know. I'm not a pessimistic person. And so I don't know. I mean, it just is what it is. So I guess that kind of wraps up my little review. This was an hour long, me talking about the movie, and really, just, I guess I still don't recommend believers especially watch it, but I don't know. Stop being so mentally and spiritually retarded. Hoodoo, voodoo, all other things exist. That don't mean that you got to practice it. That don't mean that you got to play with it. Stay faithful to God, Now, I mean, whatever, but stay faithful to God. If that's what you choose to believe, if you choose to believe in Jesus, stay faithful to Jesus. That's what I'm choosing, right? But that stuff is real. I mean, we have stories of Balaam. We have stories of all other, probably a few instances in the Bible, but they exist. The people who practice what is it? Divination and all the other stuff, it exists. So I don't understand why we're acting shocked and weird and confused. It exists. You get to decide. You need to focus on your walk with the Lord, because that's all that matters at the end of these days. Now, I pray I said everything I needed to say, because really, genuinely, it wasn't that good of a movie to me. I do think that the movie was actually, I wouldn't say pro-Christian, but it was actually a tool that worked in our favor. I think if an intellectual person actually sat down and dissected and looked at the movie for what it was rather than what they wanted it to be, because even trying to look at the movie for what it was, there was no point in the movie. I don't understand the movie. I think it was a waste of time. But I mean, then coming back to it from even carnal perspective, the father made a valid point, right? You keep dancing with the devil, one day he gonna follow you home. And that is a real sentiment, whether or not you believe in God or not. If you keep messing with fire, you gonna get burned. That's not girl. And so, like I said, now whatever implication you make, that's on you. But there is the fact of what was revealed and what was shown and what played out because of it. And to me, that had nothing to do with Christianity. It had nothing to do with hoodoo. It does little intricate parts here and there toward the end. But I'm just saying, you know, it wasn't about being anti this or anti that. But granted, I mean, all the sinners ended up dying. Now, granted, not all the sinners in the world, but the sinners in this particular environment ended up dying. Besides the cousin, and I guess I didn't see that extended cut. So I don't know if it really happened, but I'm just saying that's what I read. The cousin went to go see Sammie. Sammie's old and he's playing on the stage and yada, yada, yada. And he gives him the offer of, do you want to be a vampire now or whatever? I don't know. That's what I read though. But anyway, I'm trying to think, is there anything else I want to say? Woo, it took me an hour to go through all that. I really pray I said something that was, I mean, not just catchy to the ear, but something that was genuine and honest and helpful, because it serves me no purpose to have watched a movie and not seen the goodness of God and be able to relay it to the people of God, right? Or even those who might be looking for God or those who doubt God. It serves me no purpose as a believer anyway. And so, I'm just thinking as I'm talking, I'm just scanning through my brain to see if there was anything else that I missed over. But no, I mean, like I said, that vampire, the Irish vampire, the leader basically was looking for a community. And that's how a lot of things go. You start telling people this is how they need to be. This is what they need to do. And that's whether or not that's faith, religion or not. Everybody of all walks of life tries to build community. And some people do it in a manipulative way. Other people do it in genuine ways. But sometimes, I mean, you got to decide what is right at the end of the day for your life. But yet there is a fact. There is something that does not change. Whether you believe it or not, whether you have seen it or not, there is a thing that does not change. And so, I mean, we all get to choose. But it's kind of crazy because the Irish man brought all them other people down with him just because he wanted to feel love. I mean, what? Just because he wanted it to be the way he wanted it to be rather than the way that it was. But I mean, anyway. Lord, please let me cover everything I needed to cover for that movie. There are people out here with church hurt, y'all, and we got to know how to minister. We got to know how to actually notice the signs and not shame them or make them feel any worse, because most of them are looking for a reason to hate God even more. They won't say they hate God, but that's what it's come down to, because there's been things that have happened in the church to me. There's been things that have happened in my family and my friendships, but I never blamed God. I never made it where I wanted to be away from God, because I knew that people were responsible for their own actions. Every man will be held accountable for what they have done. I don't hold God responsible for what man has done to me, whether in or outside of the church, the lack thereof or the excessive abuse of whatever, God is good. That's what I believe. And that's what I think I've seen. But there are people who they have their experiences, and I cannot tell them what they have felt. I can't. That's not my job. But my job is to love them. My job is to hear them out. My job is to walk with them, talk with them, you know, whatever God plants in me to do, that's my job, to add value to them, help them see themselves, because we really have to let go of other people. And that's another video that I want to talk about later. You know, we have to stop making our lives about other people. And I'm not talking about like you got to be selfish. No. I'm talking about like making excuses for why we are the way we are, or why certain things can't happen for us, or why this or that, or whatever. You're like, we really have to stop making our lives about other people. We do. And so remember to stay positive. Keep that with you. Spread it wherever you go. My name is Stefan, if you didn't know. With all that being said, love yourselves and love others. I am out of here. Later.